Alhamdulillah wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah wa ba'd. So welcome to everyone here. Welcome to students online. We're just doing a quick recap of one or two questions of our previous lessons, and then we'll move on. We are talking about developing the love of the Prophet alayhi salatu wassalam. How do you do that? Say again?
Learn this year.
Good. Learn his life, his seerah. Learn his challenges, his experiences, the good times, the bad times, all the sacrifices that he went through to preserve and protect this deen. That also includes learning at least the biographies of whom? The people who surround him. What are they? The companions, right? Learning a little bit about them. The principle is this. The Prophet ﷺ is of course the messenger, and he is the leader of the ummah. His followers, the companions, are the ones who preserve the Quran so that later generations, me and you, could have access to it. Those Sahabas did that by sacrificing everything that they've ever known and had and come to their religion, accept Islam and follow this leader. And as we all know, for many companions, it costed them their lives. They literally died. They literally shed their blood and died in war and other circumstances just so you and I could have the Quran. So when you take a moment and you really reflect and think about the ultimate sacrifice to have this book, that immediately for the believer should translate that, subhanAllah, I should really be grateful and do my best to really, really appreciate and study this book. Tell me something else that helps us develop the love for the Prophet ﷺ. Sending salawat. Excellent. Tell me something else. Yes, that's the most important as well. Okay? Practicing his sunnah, his teachings. All too often you hear it. People love to, this is the sunnah. Prophet ﷺ said this. Don't do this. Gotta follow sunnah. And you know what they end up doing? Many who do that, they split the sunnah in two categories. There's a group that is very conservative, very strict and precise when it comes to the rituals of the sunnah. So they will be in the front line. They will make sure they try fast Mondays and Thursdays. They go for Umrah, they go for Hajj. Like they dress Islam, they look Islam, they talk Islam. But then there's one problem. When it comes to, life at home, life with their families, life with their children, life with their wives, their husbands, and so on, all of that is a mess. Like, that's secondary, or even sometimes it doesn't even make it in the conversation. As long as he or she can do the rituals, they forget that when they're not doing those rituals, you still have sunnah to follow. You still have things you have to do. So my point is that if you want to maintain a steady and consistent love in Islam for Allah and His Prophet, you have to do both. You don't just do the rituals, but you also have to live the life of a good person, an honest person, a person who's kind, that strives to do the right thing. All of those things are captured in loving the Prophet ﷺ, okay? And of course, his wives is also, their ulama tell us, is an effective way to appreciate him, is to see how his wives behaved and took the presence of the Prophet ﷺ seriously. Like, for example, Aisha radiallahu anha never once refers to her husband as her husband. She never calls him Muhammad. She never calls him my husband. Every one of the hadith that we have of her, she always referred to him as Rasulullah ﷺ, because she knows that she is the closest example to the rest of the ummah when it comes to respecting him. If the wife can respect the Prophet ﷺ and call him by the title that everyone else is required to do, then that sends an extremely powerful message. She doesn't just respect him as her husband, but she respects him because he is truly a prophet of Allah, and that comes first. That's priority. Then we are at Hadith number 4. So hadith number 4, Abdullah ibn Mas'ud radiyallahu anhu. Tell me something about Abdullah ibn Mas'ud, please. Tell me something about Abdullah ibn Mas'ud. Say it again. Okay, like when he was narrating, or just in general? No, he was a lot older than a youth. Mm-hmm. He has an exceptional knowledge of the Quran. Mm-hmm. Oh, you're confusing him with another companion, Julaybib. I mean, in society and culture, they were. He was what we refer to. He was what we refer to as a midget. He was petite, extremely skinny. One day, a narration states that he was leaning on a tree. He was trying to get around it because the wind, it was almost like a sandstorm. So he was trying to get away from it by just sort of hiding himself so that the tree could block some of the wind, compounding at him. His garment lifted up and his legs and ankles were exposed. When the companions saw it, they immediately started laughing at him. And then Prophet ﷺ heard about that. And he got angry, like really upset. And he told the companions who laughed at him and said, those legs are going to be heavier than the mountains of Uhud on the Day of Judgment. So you may laugh now because of whatever, but those legs, the value, the quality of devotion of what Abdullah ibn Mas'ud radiyallahu anhu represented and the efforts he put forth to preserve this deen will be equivalent to the greatest and the most vast of mountains, and especially Mount Uhud. It is not just a mountain. Mount Uhud is an ayah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Mount Uhud is a mountain that some of the ulama say will be in Jannah. So it's not just any mountain, right? Abdullah ibn Mas'ud radiyallahu anh was also one of the strictest companions and most knowledgeable when it comes to the tafsir of the Quran. He was so devoted to learning the Quran is that anytime he heard that somebody had an ayah or an explanation of a verse anywhere, he would jump on his horse and go find that person to learn from them. So every time you hear his name, just always remember a great Sahabi and scholar of the Quran. And furthermore, as I said to you, he was small and petite, but he was also described to be one of the companions that resembled the Prophet ﷺ the most. What did he do? He stayed at the Prophet ﷺ's house for a certain time, 3 months to 6 months. And in that period, he watched everything. He watched his posture, ﷺ, how he walked, how he moved, how he sat. And he started to train himself to walk that way, to sit that way, to act that way. So much so that from a distance, when companions would see him, they had to sort of like pause and look closely because they couldn't tell if it was Abdullah ibn Mas'ud or the Prophet ﷺ. So he had great respect and love for him, ﷺ. Yes. Prophet ﷺ also, of course, made dua, but for all the companions, but there are some companions, and Abdullah ibn Mas'ud is definitely one of them, when he made very specific dua. Ibn Abbas is another as well, and so on.
I remember something, I don't know if it's the Sahabi. Was he the first Sahabi to read the Quran out loud in Mecca?
Not Abdullah ibn Mas'ud. No. I know who you're talking about. It doesn't come to mind. There is another companion that was the first. Inshallah, hopefully, actually I did a lecture on him already a while ago. Just give me, let's just keep going, and inshallah, I hope Allah will give me that wahi, and I will remember that name, inshallah. No, Abu Jahl was killed by 2 brothers, 2 young teenagers. So let's get right into this, okay? Abdullah ibn Mas'ud radiyallahu anhu describes the creation of the human being. So let's read some of this together. Obviously, we'll take a few lines only. Let's begin. عن أبي عبد الرحمن عبد الله ابن مسعود عبد الله ابن مسعود رضي الله عنه قال حدثنا رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم وهو صادق المصدوق وهو صادق المصدوق. Pause. See how that hadith began. Take a look at it. Sorry, next here. So it says here that Abdullah ibn Mas'ud radiallahu anhu says the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, and he is a sadiq, the most truthful one, and also masduq, the believed. Masduq is somebody who doesn't have to even say a word. You just know they're telling the truth. I think we all know someone like that. Aside from yourselves, we all know somebody that you can trust them without them saying a word. You can trust them because of their lifestyle, the way they act, talk, and you've seen it before in other areas where no matter what it is, they're 100%. That's masduq. But sadiq is the person, as you see here, whose truth is exemplified in all of their transactions and their interactions with people. So if somebody says, can you just keep this to yourself? It's confidential. Promise me you will. Sadiq, no problem. I will affirm, but you can trust me. I will keep this confidential. So they overlap with one another. But my point is that Prophet ﷺ is both. If he verbalized or he illustrated honesty and trust, you believe him. And if he said nothing and he literally, his presence alone is there, you still believe him. You still trust him. And you understand? So he's both. Then the hadith begins that inna ahadakum, go ahead, yujma'u khalquhu في بطن أمه 40 يوما نطفة. Pause. So now the hadith officially begins. According to the hadith, there we go. The creation of each person in their mother's womb goes through several stages. For 40 days as a drop of fluid or a nutfa. So here's the thing, right? I'm not a specialist when it comes to this subject, on the medical side of things. So we're not going to touch that, but there are some basic things I'll share with you. What this hadith here is going to highlight is the following. So I've summarized some of the points, so at least you have a good synopsis of what the intent of this hadith is all about. So the first is, of course, stages of human creation. Now this is found throughout the Quran. Surah Al-Mu'minun also has one of the longest verses in Surah Al-Mu'minun. Its entirety is referring to human creation as well. But it gives you other angles, the stages of a child as soon as it's born, then from the stage of a tifl or a infant, and then it goes to the next stage where it becomes a healthy baby. It starts to grow out of the infancy stage into a child that's walking or it's crawling freely. Then it goes from that to a younger child, 10, 12 years old, then to the teenager side, then to the young adult side, then to the mature adult, then after that towards the elderly stage. So eventually starts to become older and into the elderly stage. So it breaks down all of these stages of growth in life in another ayah. Then you have other verses that capture other areas when it comes to the massive subject of human creation. So the point here is this particular hadith is helping us to appreciate two things. Number one, the incredible detail and the complexity of human creation. That it is something at the end of the day so complex that students till this day, there are doctors and specialists that will devote 10 to 15 to 20 years of their lives only studying this one subject and still barely scratch the surface. Aisha radiallahu anha, some of the companions were stunned of her incredibly high and sophisticated knowledge when it comes to human creation and the human body. You could ask her about the liver and the functionality of the liver, lungs, other organs in the body. You can ask her about, what gives us strength naturally? What should I eat? What should I do? Anything to do with the human body, she was so well versed in it. It came to a point where a companion once asked her, how do you know all of this stuff? And she says that, she responds to him and says, I listen. I listen to the doctors and the specialists that do live here. In other words, she would be in the presence with the Prophet ﷺ, and those, obviously, in Medina and Mecca, there are people who specialize in this, right? You have your local doctors or clinics. You have companions who do that and specialize in these areas, and they carry procedures and medicines and how to treat certain things from generations. They learned from the previous generation, from their fathers, and so on and so forth. All of that knowledge is carried on. Aisha would be constantly listening and literally memorized and understood thoroughly some of these areas when it comes to the human body. And she was able to give advice, and she was able to treat some of the companions and advise them for a healthier lifestyle. Here's the point. This particular narration, or this part of Aisha radiallahu anha's life, highlights to us of just how effective it is to literally just pay attention. Ibn al-Qayyim rahimahullah has a whole section that he writes just on istima', just listening and listening attentively, and what the effects of that it has on you as a student and me as a student seeking ilm. Sometimes it's not about just asking questions or just writing it down or just memorizing. Sometimes it's okay to just put your hands like this and absorb, and then train the ears to just comprehend, to download. And this is how Ibn al-Qayyim tells us that this is one of the ways that you can train the mind to increase its memory and to memorize things in general a lot easier. Listening is a pathway to strengthening the memory. So my point here is that with these three stages, let's just look at the other two. So you have one stage where it comes from a fluid or a nutfa. Let's go back to the Arabic. ثم يكون علقة. So let's continue reading right here, okay? ثم يكون علقة مثل ذلك. ثم يكون مضغة مثل ذلك. ثم يرسل إليه الملك فينفخ فيه الروح ويؤمر بأربع كلمات. Pause. Many of you know this. So the stage of creation continues for the first 40, then another 40 days. From this nutfa, ثم يكون أربعين or أربعين, then 40 days as a dingling dot. Alaqa is literally like a heavy fluid, right? So it's gone from the early stages. Now it goes into something that literally begins to develop. Right? In other words, you could start to recognize now that there's growth, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is literally starting this process. And then from alaqa, another 40 days, it turns into a morsel or a flesh or a mudgha is referred to. All three of these words are found throughout the Quran. So these are not just something exclusive to this narration, it's also in the Quran as well. So these three stages are extremely detailed, and like I said, it's not my background, but it's something that you can certainly study further on your own. Followed by 40 days as a mortal. After 120 days, an angel is sent to blow the spirit into the individual, and it is commanded to record 4 things. 120 days. So in other words, what happens to the child after 120 days? It goes from what to what? In the womb of the mother, what's happened now? After 120 days, the ruh is given, meaning now the child is alive. There's a heartbeat. Now there is life. Now there's a ton of fiqh that comes with this. a credible amount of fiqh. Let's say if let's talk about some of them. If the mother is sick or becomes ill and cannot have this child, and the subject of abortion comes up, very quickly, what is the ruling on abortion in Islam? Does anybody have any idea? Okay, so one opinion. Okay, there are actually a few opinions on this, but one of them is, as long as it happens before the ruh is blown into the child, so basically before the child is alive, then a miscarriage, or excuse me, an abortion is permissible. But it's not that simple, because there are other components that have to come into play. For the mother, she should also seek the I don't want to say permission necessarily, but she should also consider the husband and his thoughts on this issue before a final decision is made. So the decision is not solely and exclusively just on her. Understand? This is one opinion. Second opinion does give us she is allowed to make this decision on her own, because ultimately she's the one carrying the child. All the risks are with her. It's life and death when a woman is pregnant and carrying that child and deliver that child. She could die because of everything that's happening to her, and most of it she can't do anything about. You can't control it. You know, you can try to eat the right things, sleep the right way, adjust your life and start to do as much things as you know, but at the end of the day, everything is in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's qadr. So you will decide when and how this child and its growth will continue. So she has to rely on that at the end of the day. Who is the greatest example of that? Where at the end of the day, you didn't know you're pregnant, you got pregnant. Okay, fine. I don't know what I'm supposed to do. I don't know how I'm supposed to live. I have no experience with pregnancy. And I need to just depend on Allah and talk to Him. Who's the example we have in the Quran? And you see her story, how it begins? Her story begins not just about Maryam alayhi salam. The story begins when she finds out she's pregnant, right? Remember, Jibreel alayhi salam comes, Surah Maryam, second page of Surah Maryam. All of that 10, 12 ayat are all devoted to. When she gets the news, she actually tries to, one could say that anybody in her situation would have done the same. She tried to defend it and just like, what are you talking about? No man has ever touched me. Like you can't say that about me because I've never done anything. And of course, the miracle, I was sent by Allah to give you these glad tidings. Kun fayakun, Allah Azza wa Jal has willed it, so that's it. You have to accept it. So what does she do? She literally runs away. She starts to feel this pain, there's movement, there's contraction. She doesn't know what to do. You know the story. She goes by a tree, a date tree. The ayah mentions that she had to climb to get to a date tree or a bunch of trees that were far away from everyone else. Why is she doing that? Because she needs what? Privacy. Right? So she goes and she makes dua to Allah, and Allah continues to guide her. She became so overwhelmed with pain. What did she do with that tree? Just take a moment and visualize this. She shook a date tree. Have any of you here, I'm sure some of you have seen a date tree. It is literally like a wall that's growing and sprouting out of the ground. Like literally, it looks like it's the tree made out of steel. No matter what you do to this thing, it's incredibly, incredibly complex. You have to study for years to understand, the implications of trying to grow and maintain and nurture a date tree. And it cannot be done just anywhere. It has to be done in certain locations where it's exposed to a certain temperature and a certain amount of sun. You cannot just plant one date tree and then another and another, because you have to go back to the whole idea of the male tree and the female tree, and you have to position it in a certain way so that this process can begin. It's incredibly complex. Literally, you have to sit and study and gain experience for years before you could understand what this is. She now takes this tree out of that pain and struggle and literally causes it to move. And of course, you know the wisdom behind that. So After 120 days, going back to the subject of abortion, there's also a third opinion. The third opinion is that the general rule, it is highly encouraged that you should try your very best to keep the child, okay? Even if you know that there are complications, but the complications are not life-threatening, right? They're just like, she might be born with, certain defect or some kind of disability or something. That is something that the believer should try their very best, if they're able to maintain and continue with the birth of this child and all the struggles that come along, because our Prophet ﷺ said that the people with a deficiency or a disability or whatever you wish to call them, these are the people that they will inshallah be the people who are guaranteed Jannah. Because every second that they have to live and struggle through that disability is an act of khair and sadaqah and blessing. Like, they're being rewarded. That is why the Prophet ﷺ, every time he saw a blind man, somebody who's deaf or with a disability, you know what he would do, ﷺ? Never ever would he walk by them. He would stop, literally ask the companions to move, and shake the hand and greet that individual. Quick question, why? Why would he do that? Okay, person of Jannah, but why wouldn't you do that with like Umar or Abu Bakr? Specifically people with disabilities. Yeah. It is the sunnah to give more attention, more care, more patience, more accommodation, more tolerance, more love, more respect to the people with disabilities than everyone else. It is the sunnah to pause and show that extra care and attention. You recognize, but you also respect, because why? This test is something that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put on them and they can't do anything. It limits them to such an extent, but to also respect that despite all of that, they are still doing what they can to stay upon the path of hidayah. So long story short, when it comes to that subject of abortion, there is no one complete final answer, right? And another opinion that some of the scholars, especially the Fatwa Committee of the Middle East, they issued a fatwa years ago that one should go and see their local, their doctor or specialist and consult the local imam and come to a decision what they feel is best, right? Anyhow, after 120 days, an angel is sent to blow the spirit or the ruh into the individual. And here are the four things. Their livelihood. So let's go back to the hadith. بِأَرْبَعِ كَلِمَاتٍ بِكَتْبِ. So we are here. Everyone after me. There we go. Right here. بِكَتْبِ. Okay, one more time. بِكَتْبِ رِزْقِهِ وَأَجَلِهِ وَعَمَلِهِ وَشَقِيِّ. Go back. So the first one is four things. Their livelihood. What does that mean? When we say their livelihood, what is it referring to? Okay, so this livelihood, not the lifespan is coming up next, but the livelihood, whether they'll be happy, whether it'll be sad, whether it'll be difficult, whether they'll experience more hardship and pain rather than happiness and peace and stability, all of that's been preordained. It's been written before they even, before they arrive, before they enter the world. So that's number one. Lifespan, that's pretty self-explanatory. Deeds, what does that mean? وَعَمَلِهِ. When we say the deeds that they refer, what is it referring to? What kind of deeds? Right? It's referring, it's referring to both, but specifically the deeds that they do to please Allah. So we're not just talking about random actions. We're talking about their devotion to pleasing Allah. And it also includes their bad deeds. So all of the righteousness that they're striving to do, to what level they arrive at, it's written. And the opposite of that. So their scale of khair and the scale of evil, all of it's been pre-written. And then the last and whether they will be wretched or happy. Let's just take a look at a couple of things here. The 4 decrees of fate. At the time the soul is breathed in, the angel records these 4 things: livelihood, lifespan, and so on. Can any of this change? How? Like, let's say Allah wrote that for somebody that they will live for 50 years. Is it possible that that can change and they live longer or less? How? It certainly has to do with qadr, but how does that change? It's already been pre-written.
But over here, when they say ultimate destiny, like for example, they could use, like if their lifespan is 50 years, but that changes like through dua or whatever. But over here, what's written is the end result. So even the change that's happening is not taken into consideration. It's the ultimate change that happens, like the actual death day or age.
Okay, so let's just put it together that this all is in reference to their end, and that number is subject to change, whatever that number will be. So when we're saying that lifespan is going to be 40 years, that's what they're going to get at the end, 40 years. But we want to know that, can we change that to a different number? So now the lifespan is no longer, technically, is no longer what was pre-written. Can you change what was pre-written? So there are 2 ways to look at this. Some of the scholars say that all of this here is written in the Lawh al-Mahfuz, so it's been preserved and only Allah has access to that. We don't know exactly what that is. We will never know what is in the Lawh al-Mahfuz, only Allah does. So whatever these 4 things are, we will never know. So when you make dua now, oh Allah, extend my life, oh Allah, give me a long life, allow me to see 100. It's been written for you a different number, but this is the wisdom of not knowing. Because Allah has allowed that there is one thing the believer can do. If they devote themselves to it, Allah, out of His permission and His authority, will change that number. What is the thing the believer can do? You all know it. Prophet ﷺ told us that dua changes qadr. Because in essence, what are you doing? You're asking Allah, you're depending on Allah to do something. And since Allah is al-Qadir, He is the source, He is the owner, He is the one that decides qadr, the fact that you are turning to Him and asking Him to change, there is certainly without a doubt the possibility that that qadr can change. So to keep it very straightforward, whatever that lifespan is, whatever the rizq is, it's one thing, but the thing that you and I should be concerned about the most is that in these 4 areas, so this is the second point, in these 4 areas are what the believer should be prioritizing and focused on the most in their life. 4 things you should be constantly improving and working at, ensuring that you do it to the best of your ability to please Allah. How you choose to live, where, what are culture, what society, what heritage, what habits you develop, all of that. You know how some people say, this is the way I grew up. Yeah, I just call people idiots wherever. That's how I am. It doesn't mean anything to me. And so if you call somebody that, or you call somebody like stupid, you say to somebody, it's just a random word, loose to me, just throw it around. Yeah, this person's so stupid, but whatever. And others take offense to that. What does that have to do now with this hadith? It's a reminder now that even in your livelihood, you picked up some bad habits along the way. So I don't want anyone, and scholars teach us as well, you don't want these things to just be restricted to the hadith. Take a moment, and this is an opportunity for you to really pause and think about things that I have to improve, and the things that I'm doing great, how do I increase that? So with respect to livelihood, lifespan, deeds, and the ultimate destiny, the ultimate end, is whether they will be wretched or happy. What is that in reference to? It could be in reference to the dunya, or it could also be in reference to the akhirah, Jannah or Jahannam. Okay? Jannah or so, you know, in essence, like pretty much all the hadith that we look at, we really don't know exactly unless it is unanimously agreed on. We really don't know exactly what they're all referring to. But the point is, there is a lesson for all of us here. Okay? Yeah.
Actually, there's a hadith which mentions some of the things if we do that increases the lifespan, like being good to
Yes. Yes.
So, yeah, does that mean we have to work towards those?
Yeah, absolutely. So, sister brought up a very important a point as well on the subject. There are things that you and I can do to purify and increase our lifespan in doing righteous deeds, in living a life that Allah is pleased with. There are certain things that you and I can do to enhance that, to increase that, along with our lifespan. Whatever the lifestyle Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala written for you and me, there are certain deeds you and I can do to increase that lifespan and live longer. Does anybody know what those are? What are some of the things we can do? Charity is definitely one. Okay, so sadaqah, just being generous in general, not just giving your zakat, no, in general. What is a second? Our Prophet ﷺ told us. What is a second? Fasting, silatul rahim, so keeping ties of kinship, maintaining good relation, especially with family. But on that note, our Prophet ﷺ also told us birrul walidain, to be good and respectful to your parents, whether they are alive or have passed on, to maintaining and protecting their legacy, their name. You know how sometimes, not sometimes, it's very common that when parents pass away, you know, there might be some ill feelings or disappointment or even hatred with some of the things that may have happened during their life with family, or that one uncle or that one sibling or that one neighbor that were not resolved. And so those individuals who are still alive hold those grudges against the deceased, right? It's a common thing. And so if you now strive to work through that and do your best to somehow say, look, you know, they're gone, they're dead. You know, I just want you to if there's something I can do, to sort of bury the hatchet now that you don't have to think of them in such a way, I'm willing to do that. Insha'Allah, by Allah's will, because you strive to maintain that legacy of your parents, insha'Allah, one of the benefits of that is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala blesses and extends your lifespan. So it's remarkable, yeah. If Allah sends a child and gives them, so you're asking, like, when does this actually begin for the individual? Like, okay, their happiness or the, you know, living a difficult or unhappy life, when does that actually begin? Mm-hmm. So this here is, so everybody understand the question? Like, why would Allah allow a child and destine for them unhappiness? What's the response to this? Or a difficult life? What's the response to that? You all know the answer, by the way. I love your answers, mashallah. You know, actually, she said something very interesting that, you know, that's the dunya. Ad-dunya mal'una, mal'unu ma fiha. Like, the world is cursed and everything in it is a curse. But the child now, you all know the answer. Is it now that as soon as the child is born, it starts to experience all of these things, the unhappiness and blah, blah, crying 24 hours a day, sick, or just doesn't want to touch mommy, wants to go crawl to the TV, this is my daddy now. No. Children, are they accountable for anything? That's all. It's when they arrive at the stage of accountability, then these things begin to I guess you become accountable. In Arabic, we refer to it as mukallaf. Now you're accountable for these things. A child is never accountable for anything. If a child dies or a baby dies, they immediately, by default, they go to Jannah. Okay? Yeah. And the actions will only matter once they reach the stage of accountability. That's when it matters. So for the boys, generally speaking, there's no exact number, 12, 13 years old. For a daughter, between 9 to 13, and sometimes even a little older than that. So somewhere in that bracket. Those are the stages of accountability. So that is when their amal now it matters. Now that 13 or that 12-year-old must wake up for Fajr on their own. Of course, the parents will encourage it, but they will be accountable now and will have to answer to Allah if they fight it or they choose, okay, mommy, daddy, they're not here, let's just sleep in. They will be accountable for that, right? Yep.
So, the word happy, like in Arabic, is it like, what's the word?
In the hadith,
In the Hadith, sorry, I'm just trying to search it.
so it's two. You have shaqiyun أو سعيد. So shaqiyun is the opposite of happiness. So shaqiyun literally like refers to a life that you feel broken. You feel torn apart. Everything just tears you to pieces emotionally, spiritually, financially. It's just everything falls apart. You know how we say that, like my life is falling apart? You're in essence saying that I'm experiencing shaqiyun. Everything's just being torn. And then sa'idun, of course, is one of the common words. There are other words in Arabic as well for happiness that highlight different things, farih or farhan. Let's continue here. A lot of these concepts that are mentioned in this hadith will come up in other hadith as well. So when we move on, it doesn't mean we're done. They will come up and address other angles of these same concepts, okay? Then the Prophet ﷺ continues, فَوَاللَّهِ الَّذِي Go ahead. فَوَاللَّهِ الَّذِي لَا إِلَهَ غَيْرُهُ إِنَّ أَحَدَكُمْ لَا يَعْمَلُ بِعَمَلِ أَهْلِ الْجَنَّةِ حَتَّى ما يكون بينه وبينها إلا ذراع. Pause. Let me see if I have all of that. Okay, somebody read me the translation. How about one of the brothers here? Want to read for me the translation? Continue from where it says, "In ahadakum." So, yeah, go ahead.
By Allah,
Mm-hmm.
other than woman, there is no God. Sorry. Other than
Don't worry, we didn't hear that.
woman, there is no God. Verily, one of you behaves like the people of paradise.
Okay, pause. Verily, one of you who behaves like the people of paradise. Yeah, continue.
Until there is,
Uh-huh.
but an arm's length between him and it.
Okay, until there is but an arm's length between him and Jannah. What is the image that's being painted right now for us? What's the image? This person worked, they did righteous deeds, they are literally standing in front of the door of Jannah. Okay, continue.
And that which has been written overtakes him.
إِلَّا ذِرَاعٌ. Okay, so what happened? What happened here? They're literally standing in front of Jannah, but something happened. So, in other words, they worked their whole life, they arrived, they made it. 60, 70, 80 years of their life, they arrived now, they made it. Tahajjud, Umrah, Hajj, you name it, they were devoted. But they could not get in past the door and get into Jannah. Something paused it. What happened to them? Just pause and think for a second. Continue. Mm-hmm.
And so he behaves like the people of hellfire, and thus he enters it.
Okay. What happened to this person? Or, so they could have very well died as a practicing Muslim and believer, devoted. Something stopped them from crossing in and entering Jannah. So what scholars say, there was a deed of something, a major flaw, that all what they have done was done in vain. This is one interpretation. What's an example of that? They worked their whole life to do all kinds of khair, but never called their mom and dad, never checked up on them. Mom and dad became old, sick, and frail, lived down the street. You guys figure it out. I don't have time. You know, I don't need, every time I come to you guys make fun of this, you look at how I wear, you tell me I need to do that. It's annoying, just be there. That one deed is enough to pause this individual from entering Jannah. Because why? Birrul walidain, and especially when parents get old, you all know that verse, فَلَا تَقُلْ لَهُمَا أُفْ, don't say uff to your parents. You all know this verse, right? That verse is not just about respecting parents. It's specifically focused on parents who attain an old age. Because when you get to that stage, you know, all you can do is hold on to your iman to get through that. Because your parents now arrive at a stage of their life where, you know, their tolerance is limited, their patience is limited. Every little thing will annoy them. I don't want to go here. Put that table. I put the spoon here. Why did you move it there? You cooked whatever. I taught you to cook way better. The food you gave me has no taste. What kind of, you know, daughter are you? What kind of husband are you? You know, look at where I'm living. I hate these walls. They're green. I want them to be blue. What kind of dear son? I didn't. Oh, and it just goes on and on and on. And what did Allah tell us to do? Don't even think about showing them a frown face or any kind of disagreement, hatred, anger. Don't even think about. فَلَا تَقُلْ لَهُمَا أُفْ. Uf is not a word, by the way. Uf is an action. In Arabic, we refer to it as a ism fi'l. It's a name of a random action. So let's say you go over to your mom or you go over to your parents, and you're like, oh, thank God you're here, you know. I haven't vacuumed in so long. And he's like, okay, mom, I'll do it. That's off. Just without a word, just your action shows that you're disappointed. And for that alone, pauses this individual from getting into Jannah. There are many other deeds that do this as well. So this is one interpretation. Another interpretation is that there is a specific deed that stops them. So one hadith highlights one specific evil action or deed that causes this group to pause right in front of the doors of Jannah. The hadith is found in the Sunan of Ibn Majah. The Prophet ﷺ, you've probably heard me say this hadith before, where a group will be given entrance to Jannah. Allah will say, go to Jannah now. But it's not done until you enter. Okay, so you're thinking, okay, alhamdulillah, we made it. You arrive in front of the doors and the doors will not open for you. This group will turn to Allah, oh Allah, what have we done? Why will you not enter us in Jannah? And Allah will say to them, you have a fallout or a disagreement between so and so, yourself and someone else, that was not resolved. And so therefore, resolve it now, or I will intervene, meaning that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will then decide their destiny. So what is the specific deed? Basically, they cut somebody off, you know, the relationship was cut off, they had a fallout, and neither made the effort to try to repair that relationship. They left it as is and thought that it just would be like forgotten. You know, it was 45 years ago. That's how long I've never talked to them. Like, they're nobody to me. Well, the only problem with that is 45 years ago, an angel recorded everything. And now it's back, you're accountable. So the second interpretation, it's referring to a very specific deed and not deeds in general, right? So my point here is, despite that it's not outlined specifically what it is, it certainly gives us an imagery that is horrific to know that you got that close. Your parents, your family, everybody who died before you is right behind that door, and you can't get there yet. right? So we pray inshallah that Allah protects us from that, inshallah. I mean, continue. Yeah. Yeah, where the relationship cuts off or whatever. Yeah, it's for everyone. The religion is not a factor. So if you have a fallout, even with a non-Muslim, that still counts, because keeping ties of kinship or a good relationship is not something that is subject to religion. This is about akhlaq, this is about sincerity, this is about a pure heart, this is about treating people fairly, being just, being kind. That's what it's about. Religion doesn't necessarily have to teach you that. Life taught you that. So if somebody hurts you or has damaged you, their religion is not a factor in this. But your job as a believer is that you have to try your best to make amends and try to fix the. Allah is not telling you to perform a miracle. Allah is just saying, just make the effort. Allah is not telling us to go change that person. Nobody can do that. Okay, continue.
And one of you behaves like the people of hellfire until there is but.
So, okay, so what is the behavior of hellfire? So now he's standing in front of the door. He realizes, oh my God, this one thing stopped me. So he starts to behave like the people of the fire. What's the behavior? He starts to behave like the people of the fire.
Like Thubura, for example.
Okay.
Yad'u Thubura, or like this is one something that came.
Absolutely. Just in general, just being ungrateful and complaining and cursing the situation. Oh my God. Oh Allah, you said I was going to do, if I do this, I will get that. So the people of the hellfire, one of their qualities is that they lose gratitude. They're grateful for nothing. They feel entitlement. They feel like they've worked for it, so they should get it. That also taps into another quality or another etiquette: pride, ego, arrogance. Prophet ﷺ, but also in the Quran, Allah tells us that even an atom's weight of pride will be enough to pause this individual from entering Jannah. Like, it is something that you still must ask Allah for forgiveness, because pride is the source of all arrogance. If somebody has pride, you can't advise them. Somebody has pride, you can't point out their faults and their mistakes. Because why? They're too prideful. Their ego has reached to such a state where, who are you to tell me that something's wrong with me? Who are you to try to educate me? That attitude. That attitude is as spiritually filthy and disgusting as somebody who's a racist. Right? Being a racist is very similar. Like, it's a disgusting attitude to have, because you had no say in creation. You didn't choose your color. So what makes you think that you can look down at the other colors? You didn't decide to be who you are. So what makes you think you're superior to others? Right? So the whole idea, the mindset of that. So this could also be in reference to, they start behaving like the people of the hellfire. Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So let's just mention one more point, or we'll move on, right? Because I really want to finish this. So for the students online, that if somebody is just toxic in their nature, in their attitude, and you just don't want to be around that, is that grounds to sever ties with that individual? What is your response? What do you guys think? Okay, so who says no? Raise your hand. Just tell me, who says no? You cannot, that is not grounds to cut off ties with that individual. And who says, it's okay, yes, you should be able to cut ties with them. So, okay, depending on the severity, okay.
What if it's a miskin and he's toxic?
Okay, so the severity, so it could be that, or it could be, just something mild, something innocent. They didn't know, they're not aware,
Or something that takes you away from your religion.
or something that takes you away from a religion.
Or just set boundaries. Like you don't necessarily have to cut them off. You shouldn't sever ties, but you don't like if you see them, you say salam alaikum, but you're not going out with them
Yeah.
every week like you used
Excellent, excellent. So the answer is none that you all have said. There's no, except our sister here, there is no excuse to cut ties with anybody. None. You may limit your conversation and your presence with them, but to cut them off of your life, I'm never going to talk to them. We don't have that right. Allah never gave that right to any one of us. Like just think for a moment. Did you ever come across a hadith or an ayah that said, if this happens, cut ties with them? And if that was the case, don't you think that Musa alayhi salam would not even think about dealing with Fir'aun? Just cut him off. He got away from him and fulfill his prophethood elsewhere? No. Allah destined that his prophethood was to go back and meet this man and deal with him. But how does he deal with him? This is a man who killed babies, who killed men, women, and children, who also claimed that he was Allah himself. And as a matter of fact, he went one step above that and said, فَقَالَ أَنَا رَبُّكُمُ الْأَعْلَى, like I'm above whatever Rabb you guys believe, I'm above that as well. That's Fir'aun. Still, imagine if you were Musa alayhi salam and you had to stand in front of Fir'aun. What would you do to him? What would you want to say to him? And what does Allah tell him to do? فَقُولَا لَهُ قَوْلًا لَيِّنًا لَعَلَّهُ يَتَذَكَّرُ أَوْ يَخْشَى. Like, go and when you see Fir'aun, be really nice and calm and gentle with your words. Layyina, it means to find the most sensitive, kindest, gentle words when you're talking to him. That's Fir'aun. He deserves to be treated like the worst. And the command is to treat him with the best. Not as if he is the best, but with your best. And if I broke down that ayah to you in language, it'll blow your mind. Because the ayah says qawl, one word. In other words, the ayah is telling Musa alayhi salam, every single word must be kind. So you can't say, so Fir'aun, I'm here to ask you to free the people of Bani Israel because, you're going to Jahannam anyways, but I'm just saying, you're a terrible person, you should die now. But listen, let's just forget about that. You can't just squeeze in these insults. Qawlan layna, every single word has to be just, kind, gentle, and right. That's Fir'aun. You think the Prophet ﷺ had reason to cut off Abu Jahl? But he didn't. Abu Lahab? But he didn't. And these people are going to the hellfire. And he didn't. So we don't have any reason. I mean, there are some very, very extreme cases, but there's no general fatwa for it. You have to discuss that scenario with an imam and go from there. Let's finish this up. حتى ما يكون بينه وبينها. Okay, so the same thing continue, brother, to the end of the hadith. So it's the same thing for the conclusion. Go ahead.
And one of you believes like the people of hellfire until there is like an arm between him and it.
Yeah.
And that which has been written overtakes him. And so he behaves like the people of paradise.
Mm-hmm.
That's interesting.
Give me an example of the last one. It's the opposite. Give me the example of the last one. So now it's the opposite. They were destined to the fire, got right in front of it, but they acted like they were of the people of Jannah. So instead of going to the fire, they were entered into Jannah. Give me an example of that. Yeah.
Story of the prostitute who gave water to a dog and she was addicted.
So the story of the prostitute wanted to indulge, but was said, Inni akhafullah, I am afraid of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. One of the 7 who are shaded on the day of judgment where there is no shade except the shade of Allah. It is one of those categories as well. A man will be tempted and a beautiful, perfect model is in front of him, and all she says to him is to take advantage of me. And literally the invitation is right there. But what does he respond with? But his life, however, wasn't great either. But this one thing, and he felt the remorse and guilt of his lifestyle. Like, let's just say he had a lot of bad habits. He had anger issues, no patience. He smoked. He went out, he partied. He was just an overall, like the last person you would ever think is religious. But he was also aware that, man, I really got to do something. I really got to do something. He was sincere, but he just, and a lot of Muslims struggle with this. Like, you're trying to get over some of these issues, and every time you fall back in, the guilt just kills you. This doesn't mean that it's okay to stay there, because clearly the hadith said you're going to Jahannam, but because of that guilt, no. That is only a gift that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala chooses to give to whom He wills. So there's certainly no guarantee. So then what's the point of doing all of these good deeds? Because you want to position yourself in a place where you have the highest probability and chance to enter Jannah. That's why we continue to strive. You don't want to depend on this one thing to turn things around. Okay? So it's the same idea, but the scenario is just the opposite. And at the end of the day, the prime lesson of the hadith is, don't ever trivialize any khair and goodness you do in your life. Don't trivialize it. Just do it. Trivializing your righteous deeds is from shaitan. Shaitan was the one, like, you're going to go and read some Quran? Like, come on. You're going to give sadaqah? You work at a haram place and you did this and that. What are you doing? And the person is trying to do this with the intention, maybe it's not the right way to do it, but they're like, I got to get out of this like haram business. Let me see if I just give for the sake of Allah, and hopefully that would help me out. Something like that, right? Don't trivialize. Let's take one more hadith. عن المؤمنين. Continue. The students, let's go on after me. عن المؤمنين عبد الله عائشة رضي الله عنها قالت قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم من أحدث في أمرنا هذا ما ليس منه فهو رد. I can hear some of you, and I'm not going to point you out, but I remember your voice the first time we read the Arabic, and I hear your voice now, and mashallah, something is working. Your sincerity, inshallah, is in the right place, because I remember I heard some words, and I'm like, inshallah, it'll get there when it gets there. And mashallah, some of you have certainly started to pick up the flow, and the pronunciation is becoming more clear. So mashallah, and I hope and I pray, inshallah, that Allah continues to uplift all of us. Inshallah. This hadith is one of the most important hadith in the entire religion of Islam. This hadith is, of course, on the authority of our mother Aisha radiyallahu anha. Tell me something about Aisha radiyallahu anha very quickly. Tell me something about her. So she is, of course, the daughter of one of the, if not the greatest companion ever. And of course, he is none other than the truthful one, Abu Bakr radiyallahu anhu. Tell me something about Aisha. She is the strongest source of? She is one of the strongest sources of hadith that we have. In other words, anytime you see a hadith that has Aisha's name attached to it, it is immediately by default authentic. No questions asked. Her exceptional love for the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Her exceptional love for him. Nobody could live. Say again? So there are several narrations of revelation and ayat being given to him alayhi salatu wasalam while she is there, as if because she is there with him, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala facilitates the revelation and makes it that much easier for him or more continuous. She is definitely a person of barakah.
Because the ayah of the Quran came down on her.
The first page of Surah An-Nur. So the first page of Surah An-Nur, remember the whole scandal that was spread all over Medina about Aisha radiallahu anha? When that was happening, do you know what she was doing? So imagine everybody in your city is saying that you did so and so with another companion, because they saw her and another companion coming into Medina, and the Prophet ﷺ wasn't there. So everybody looked and they're like, oh, that's weird. The two of them all, and then the rumors began. You know, subhanAllah, sounds like our time these days, isn't it? Because the whole backbiting and scandals and spreading rumors on one another, it is truly a unfortunate poison in our communities. You know, we're so good at pointing out all the faults of the non-Muslims, and we got our own poison right in our own ummah, right? So the same thing was highlighted there. But the point is, does anybody know what Aisha was doing when this rumor was going around? Okay, so she didn't know at first. Eventually she found out. Okay, she went to her parents. No, that came a little, actually her father came to her instead.
She copied one of the prophets, and she said, "Sabrun jameel," because I have nothing else to say to any of you.
Yeah. So she remained patient. Here's what she did. You know, Aisha, when she heard that these rumors were going around, all she cared about, how is this going to make Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam look? That's all she cared about. She never said a sentence about herself. Like, oh my God, how could they say this to me? Every narration of how she handled that was only about him sallallahu alaihi wasallam, because she is his wife. So if this rumor is attached to her, then the credibility of the message of the Prophet ﷺ is also going to be tainted. People will doubt and even question his authority. So that's all she cared about. So you know what she did? Every single night for 2 weeks, tahajjud and qiyam, and just asked Allah to remove this from her. And Surah An-Nur, the first section, was revealed. Allah protected her. And even this rumor got to her father's cousin, Mistah. He got into it as well. And he's like, yeah, oh my God, that's my family. She did that? Wow. So you know what? Let me just, okay, yeah, you know what? You guys stay away from so-and-so. And Abu Bakr heard that Mistah was talking about her. He got extremely angry. And he used to help Mistah by giving him a monthly allowance because he was really poor. And he said, you know, I'm not giving you, Mistah, nothing anymore because you're talking about my daughter. Allah reveals another verse, وَلَا يَأْتَلِ أُولُو الْفَضْلِ مِنْكُمْ وَالسَّعَةِ أَنْ يُؤْتُوا, that in Surah An-Nur, you don't get to pause this help or assistance or khair that you're doing for him because of this rumor. Because this rumor, Allah will take care of it. You need to continue with your responsibilities. You don't allow a rumor to stop this khair, this sadaqah that you're doing for Allah. You understand the principle here, right? Even if you have a problem with somebody else, they offend you, they bug you, they lied about you, but you're actually helping them out. You know, they're a student of yours or a neighbor of yours, and you know, you do favors for them. They come to your business, you try to help them out, and they depend on that because they're struggling. Just because there was a issue or a disagreement is not a reason for you to pause that and say, well, you know, I'm going to punish you. You know, you're not getting anything from me. You're never invited anymore. I'm not giving you a discount anymore. Like, it's, you just figure it out. You don't get to do that. This is a bad habit with people, not just Muslims. It's a bad habit with people, that we use these fallouts as a reason to validate bad behavior. right, and validate our choice to not do, just to sweep them out of our lives. You missed the whole point. The whole point is that you were doing the sadaqah to begin with for who? That was the whole point. So Allah decided to test you. That's it. Are you really going to continue the sadaqah? Is it really for me? Okay, let's make this guy offend you a few times. Let's see how you handle him. Some people can handle it and some people simply can't. Okay, so it's really something to think about. All of this now is being highlighted just by her name. She continues, the Prophet ﷺ says, who innovates, man ahdatha fi amrina. Ahdatha means something that is brand new, introduced. Nobody has ever done it or seen it before. That's called ahdatha. So when you say he who innovates, the word innovate here or ahdatha is something that is a new action in Islam, a new thing nobody has ever heard of or done. Now that obviously leads us to the conversation of bid'ah. Bid'ah is of course a very, very comprehensive and misunderstood subject in the ummah. Bid'ah is almost like a loose term that people use and even have spiritually weaponized it on others that they disagree with or they don't understand or they judge immediately without studying and figuring things out. Oh, you guys are just doing some crazy, I never seen that. The Prophet said, do that? No. Yeah, it's a bid'ah. Like, these are the people of bid'ah. And this is what the phrase gets thrown around here and there. Believe it or not, I even, over the years, would hear people say things like reserved parking was bid'ah. Not for imams, like just anybody. Reserved parking, like in a masjid or so, is all bid'ah. It's an innovation in the deen. People used to say, like, if you want to have a nice Quran halaqah or class every Wednesday evenings in the masjid, bid'ah. Because Prophet ﷺ never did that. This classroom here, Thursday nights at 7 o'clock, bid'ah. Because Prophet ﷺ never had a class at Thursday night at 7 p.m. What's your response to that?
Bid'ah is like claiming a new found like belief or creed that was never found. Like saying there's 6
Okay.
prayers a day when there isn't.
So this is good. And to just put it as a principle, bid'ah can only be applied to religion, not worldly things. Okay, so Imam al-Shafi'i, Imam Ahmed, and the majority of scholars say a bid'ah can only be used and applied to religion. Not to worldly things, but to religion. Okay, so if you say that, you know, I want my own parking, I want a nice car, I want, nice clothing or whatever. And the reason why is because I not only can afford it, but I like dressing that way. I like being I like to have these things. Okay? No one can come to say to you, Ya akhi, the Prophet ﷺ only had 2 garments. You know, that's all he never wasted his money. And this is a real bid'ah in the deen. You can't do that. The only time you can take a worldly thing and apply the term bid'ah to it is when you take that worldly thing and attach something religious to it. So, going back to your clothing, I dress this way because I feel more religious. I feel closer to the deen. I can concentrate more when I wear a thobe or an abaya. I don't really concentrate when I'm in jeans and a shirt. That in and of itself, that could be a bid'ah. And that could even go further than just an innovation. So everybody understand? When it comes to worldly things, general principle, remember this. Everything in the world is permissible unless there's a hadith or ayah that says no. And everything in religion is haram unless there's a hadith or ayah that says yes. Okay? And that principle alone will make it very clear. Let's just pause for the adhan. Okay, students, just give me 5 minutes. Write this down, okay? So we mentioned that bid'ah or ahdatha is something brand new, but when it comes to bid'ah, it refers to a new action that is introduced or new action in Islam. So bid'ah, with respect to how it is applied to religion, it is a brand or new action that is done, and the person or the group connects it to Islam itself. Do we have a lot of this? We have endless amount of bid'ah in the deen. Why? Why is there so much bid'ah? The answer to it is because Allah made Islam perfect and complete. That's why you will constantly see this. It's not because people are just looking and micromanaging and picking on no, it's not necessarily that. It's the fact that Allah Himself said the whole religion is complete, so you don't have to do nothing, just follow what's there. But unfortunately, it is what it is. The people add certain rituals, certain practices, certain beliefs, and sort of do it their own way. Prophet ﷺ also predicted this, that on the day of judgment, there will be a group that will be sent to the hellfire, their judgment to the hellfire. Prophet ﷺ will say, Ummati, Ummati, this is my people. This is my people. And Allah will say to them, this, you do not know what they used to do or what they added to the religion after you left. You don't know. So as a result, they were thrown into the fire. So just imagine the Prophet ﷺ, he's literally pleading to Allah. Those are Muslims. They all are Muslims. They fasted, did this, that. No. They did a lot more than that. Couple more things. Bid'ah, do you ever hear that bid'ah refers to something good? Like a new action that is good? Sometimes. Like it's interpreted that way. But in essence, when a bid'ah is established, is always 100% negative. It's always referring to something that's either wrong or inappropriate or defeats the purpose of, or it has an effect on the belief or the aqeedah of the believer. So the general principle is that bid'ah always highlights that which is frowned upon or is haram or is negative. And that doesn't take into consideration the people who practice it and say, no, this is actually a good thing and it makes me happy. Just pause and think about it. When you say a bid'ah for some is happiness and they feel content with it, where does that happiness come from? Does it come from the text? Does it come from an ayah or hadith? No. Where does it come from? Think about it. From the person who's doing it. I grew up this way back home. This is what we used to do. I'm more comfortable this way. Remember these principles. From now until next week, if you happen to see certain things or hear about, just observe it for a moment. And then you will immediately now recognize where this commitment and happiness comes from. It's not the actual action itself that does that.